Greetings, dear travelers, and welcome back to another episode of Tales from the Enchanted Forest with your hosts, Fox and Sparrow.
Hiya, travelers, and once again, I get to say Happy New Year. Just a different kind of New Year this episode.
That's right, because it's time to say goodbye to the Year of the Dragon and hello to the Year of the Snake, or as it is sometimes called, the Year of the Little Dragon. Of course, if you are in Japan, then it has already been the Year of the Snake for a while, but today we are talking about the Chinese Zodiac and the Chinese New Year, the Spring Festival, or Lunar New Year, depending on what you call it, which is today, January 29th.
I love the Chinese Zodiac stuff. It's definitely one of those things as a kid we talked about a lot, which is funny because as a kid, I was talking to everyone who was born in the same year as me. So we would just keep talking about the same information.
Well, I think growing up in Canada, we did spend some time learning about different cultures and different celebrations. And I think Chinese New Year was one unit that we definitely did in either English or history, I can't remember, where we learned about the Great Race, we talked about the different animals, we talked about the history of it. And so it's one of those things that I think in Canada, at least, we saw pretty much all the time every year.
Well, that's the other interesting thing, and this is one of the things I love that coincidentally happens when we do this podcast, is that we both grew up in Canada, but we didn't grow up in, like, the same city or the same, like, obviously didn't go to the same school. So I get to find out kind of what we did differently. And I remember, I think I learned a little bit about the Zodiac, that it just existed, but I never heard the story of, like, how it came into existence. Like, so I only heard about the story like a year or two ago.
Oh.
No, it must have been just like last year when Overly Sarcastic Productions did a video of it on YouTube. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know there was a story to go along with this. And when I talked with you about it, you were like, I'm like, is this like a good story? And you were like, well, it's a bit common. And I was like, I just learned about it. New information.
That's always interesting because I think I grew up in an area where we had little areas like Little Chinatown, we had Little Italy, we had basically very culturally diverse, but we had specific areas where immigrants had chosen to settle and there were large communities of that specific culture or background. As what tends to happen when you move to a new country, like my parents also gravitated towards people from their own background when they chose where to settle. So we had all these different celebrations, and based on which school you went to or which district you were in, it was very obvious from the celebrations what was happening. And so I think we always kind of took Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year, the Spring Festival as something that just happened annually.
At the end of the day, it's also one of those kind of personality type things, like what animal, what element you were born under, and I am a real sucker for those.
I do enjoy them. I do also think they are a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. You could show me any of these Zodiac and I'd be like, yeah, that's 100% me. I completely identify with that, yes.
Yeah, for the record, 100%, and I'm not like, I don't take it seriously. I have fun with these types of things. I think they're just amusing.
See, I like that. Because I remember when I was younger, I would look at the horoscope section in magazines to see what my month was going to be like. So it's definitely something that I think people do see them, either they use it as kind of a guide or they use it as some kind of reassurance. So I think astrology in itself isn't bad. I don't think it's something to make fun of. I do think it's something that people take a lot of comfort in, which is good. We should always find things that we enjoy and have hobbies in, or that we do things that make us happy.
So this time of year includes a lot of cleaning in preparation, followed by days of visiting families, wearing new clothes, giving red envelopes, and playing with firecrackers. Of course, this year is the Year of the Snake, which means what exactly? Well, it refers to the zodiac animals which mark a 12-year cycle.
But before we get to the zodiac itself, there are many New Year stories for the Chinese New Year, and we want to tell one of those, which is the tale of the Nian. So long ago, the Nian lurked deep in the ocean and would come out on the last day of the Lunar New Year to wreak havoc and eat people. So every year the villagers would flee and try to stay awake in terror. One year, however, an old man declared that he would stand watch and deal with the monster once and for all. When the Nian arrived that night, it was immediately greeted by the sound of popping firecrackers and bright flares. The monster looked around wildly, and its cruel eyes landed on the old man, who was dressed all in red. The sounds and the color drove the Nian into a frenzy, and it dove back into the water without eating a single person or piece of livestock. When the villagers returned the next day, they found everything as they had left it. They realized that the old man was really a celestial being sent to help them, and so every year they dressed in red, lit firecrackers, and strung bright lanterns to help keep the Nian at bay. And that story kind of explains why some of the traditions are the way they are.
I like the assumption that, like, the old man must be, like, a higher being, but it could just simply have been an old coot, just kind of being a chaos gremlin.
He could have been, but like many stories that we have that come from ancient times, it's really hard to know if this was an assumption by the villagers or if they knew something. Also, without a lot of context on if he was known in the village or a complete stranger might help. But that story explains some aspects of the New Year. It does not, however, explain the zodiac animals. And this is where things get a little bit tricky. You see, the tale of why we have the zodiac animals is kind of hard to trace. We can sometimes trace the mentions of year of the blank in historical texts, which can lead you to the Qin dynasty, which is 221 to 207 BCE, or the Han dynasty, 206 to 220 BCE. So we're not quite sure around when this became normalized or what the specific stories they were telling were, but we can be sure that it was around by some point in the late Han dynasty. And, of course, as most things, the versions of this story are varied. Some say that the Jade Emperor held a dinner party and the animals that arrived in a specific order created the order of the Zodiac. Others say it was the order in which the animals arrived to see Buddha on his deathbed. And still others say it was a great race. Unfortunately, I cannot find a specific source for any of these. They all just kind of exist in storytelling traditions. So I want to tell my favorite version, and the one that I heard growing up, of course in Canada, which was the story of the Great Race, because it allows us to have an animal tale where almost every animal does something unexpected. It's also the one I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with.
And you know me, I do love a good animal tale, and when there's high stakes like a race, I'm here for it, girl. This is exciting.
So do our travelers, because our animal tales are some of our most popular tales. So I just think this would be a good way to bring in the Chinese New Year.
Agreed.
So without further ado, here is the story of the Chinese Zodiac. Long ago, the Jade Emperor invited all the animals to join a great race to find their place in the 12-year calendar. The first 12 to cross would be given a year in the order they finished. Of the different obstacles, the most grueling was a wide, fast-flowing river before the finish line. By the time the animals got to the river, Ox was in a clear lead. He was fast, steady, and a strong beast used to hard work. As he was about to paddle in, he felt someone scurrying about his feet and looked down to see Rat. Fast, clever, and tricky, Rat had made it to the river, but he knew that if he tried to swim, he would just drown. Or, worse, be pushed downstream and never finish the race. So, Rat asked Ox if he would mind giving him a ride. Being gracious, the Ox allowed it, and so they made their way. However, as Ox approached the riverbank on the opposite side, Rat jumped off and without so much as a backward glance, hurried as fast as he could right across the finish line. Ox chased after him, but he could not make up enough ground fast enough to outpace the Rat. And so Rat and Ox came in first and second place, respectively, although not respectfully.
Ain't that the truth? What a sneaky move by the Rat.
Yes, and this is the thing I think most people know from the Chinese Zodiac, is that Rat came in first because of the trick he played on Ox. So this is something that I think a lot of people will recognize. However, in Western culture, we kind of see rats as this dirty, creepy, almost disgusting thing. But it does hold a lot more meaning in Chinese and the wider Asian traditions. So they are sometimes seen as a symbol of industry and prosperity. In some traditions, a house with rats is a good sign because it shows it has plenty of food. And in other traditions, a rat that stays in a house shows that house is safe because rats will disappear when there are incoming floods or fires. Of course, when we think of rats, we think of disease-carrying, black plague, stuff like that.
Yeah, or you think of other rats, like the gym rat or something.
Yeah, and then we also have the connotations with rat being someone who's sneaky, deceitful, someone who's very crafty. So there are lots of negatives and positives here.
Mm-hmm.
The second animal to cross was the steady ox. And although he was tricked, he never complained. And it's argued, however, that the ox in the story is really a reference to a water buffalo or a lost or extinct version of a water buffalo, which was a species of oxen. And it was the common beast used to do farm work and labor in Asia at the time. So for people who are wondering, well, how did the ox outpace, let's say, a tiger? Think more, less modern ox and more water buffalo type creature.
I see. And it just kind of reflects the steady nature of just kind of going and not worrying about distractions and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That gets him there in the end. So, we got our first and second place winners. Let's talk about the next animal.
The next three animals to cross were the tiger, hare, and dragon. The tiger, of course, swam very powerfully against the tide, but it kept pushing him downstream. So by the time he made it, he was third. The hare or rabbit had known from the start that she would not be able to swim, so she jumped from stone to stone, and eventually when she ran out of stones, she managed to hop onto a log that floated across the riverbank. And then finally, the dragon, the greatest upset, in fifth place. Even the Jade Emperor had thought that the dragon would come in first because he could fly. And of course, the dragon and the tiger coming in third and fifth were odd choices considering that they hold some of the most important places in the heavens as two of the four celestial animals. In Chinese tradition, the blue dragon holds power over the season of spring and the east, while the white tiger holds power over autumn and the west. However, the dragon did have a very good response to the Jade Emperor. He replied that there was a village on fire, and so he diverted from the race to send rain. Can't really be mad at him for stopping to go help a bunch of people who were dying.
Yeah, this is very much like the Superman way of explaining things. Like, yeah, I'm amazing, I'm everywhere, but I also had to be at 3 other places. So I was a little late.
That does kind of explain the characteristics that people from the Year of the Dragon would have, which is very benevolent. So it does kind of show that although it came in 5th, it was for a very, very good reason.
Yeah. That said, I think I'm the most impressed so far with the rabbit because like the rat, the rabbit is too small to swim across, so he had to get creative, but like not like obviously getting a lift from the ox and tricking him into getting off first was its own type of cunning, but thinking of the rabbit hopping along and then getting to the point where like had to take a risk on a log getting him the rest of the way is like quite clever in their own right. So I'm very impressed with the rabbit.
Yes, and clever without being crafty or tricky.
Yes, just like more straightforward cleverness.
Next, everyone watched as Horse came out of the river. As Horse galloped to the finish line, the snake, who had been coiled up in his hoof, slid out and frightened the horse before slithering gleefully into 6th place. And Horse took 7th. So we have another form of trickery here. So Snake had curled up and basically caught a free ride from Horse and then ended up coming in 6th. So right before Horse did.
But it was coiled up in the hoof?
In the version I read, he was curled up in the hoof. In other versions, Snake and Horse come around the same time, and Snake just ends up frightening Horse so that Horse is distracted and then takes the place. In others so this one was a translated version. It could have been that Horse was, that Snake was curled up around the actual foot as opposed to the hoof, like inside the hoof. We don't really know how big this snake is. It could have been a small snake.
I am more just impressed with the snake's strength to either stay curled on the horse's like leg that had to go through water. So then you had to like fight the current to hang on and hold your breath while doing that. Honestly, yeah, the horse had to go through it, but I think the snake actually earned that spot ahead of him for all of that effort.
And so I do want to talk a little bit more about this year. So this is the year of the wood snake. Every year we have the animals, of course, and then we also have the cycle of the elements. So we have wood, which symbolizes imagination and creativity, and then we also have the snake. There are a few things that we can possibly expect from this year. First, although a lot of people expect the snake and the dragon to be very similar, they do have opposite characteristics. The year of the dragon is supposed to be a benevolent year, so the dragon is a benevolent character, whereas the snake is malevolent. The snake is often associated with illness and death. However, it's not all bad news. As the snake sheds its skin, it also symbolizes rebirth and renewal, which is why we can expect this year to be one of transformation and adaptability. And then, of course, next year we'll have the year of the horse, one that will help balance the year of the snake, since the horse is traditionally known as the original steadfast companion to mankind and is known for its intelligence, perseverance, and strength. So snake and horse took 6th and 7th. Next, we have ram, monkey, and rooster, who all arrived together after crafting a raft and crossing the river as a trio. They were awarded 8th, 9th, and 10th. The ram is known for its cooperation and is one of the 6 sacrificial animals in China. The monkey can be seen as both amusing and senseless, depending on where the stories come from. And rooster is seen as a devoted creature as he drives away the night and welcomes the day. Then in 11th place came the dog, who despite being a fast swimmer had gone distracted by having fun splashing, so came in close to last place. Dogs, of course, like horses, are known for their close companionship with mankind, but a dog is also known for its fidelity and loyalty. There are numerous legends around Asia of dogs saving their masters and being noble at a great cost to themselves, so we can forgive these ultimate good boys for having a little fun.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
And finally, in last place came the boar or the pig. In many versions of this tale, the pig was late because it stopped for a snack or a nap. And for me personally, I think this does a great injustice to the image of the pig. In many mythologies around the world, the boar is a symbol of fertility, as the one who showed humans how to sow the earth and till it with its great tusks. They are ferocious creatures, and many legends link them to warriors or warrior spirits.
I mean, that's one way to look at it. Doesn't do it justice to the pig, but the fact of the matter is the pig does come last. So I bet the pig got there, maybe had actually worked hard all day to get there, and they're like, "What took you so long?" And he's like, I was doing so well. I stopped for snacks and, was actually not that big a deal, guys. So let's not talk about it."
Or maybe the pig was the only one to realize that taking a nap or a snack was fine because it's a cycle. There's no point coming in first or middle or whatever because it'll just repeat.
Yeah, exactly.
So thus, with the pig in 12th place, the cycle of the Zodiac began. Each year, we welcome a new animal and a new element. There is one animal who is noticeably missing, however, and that is the cat. Some say the cat participated in the race, but was thrown off the back of the ox by the rat. Others claim the cat asked the rat to wake her up before the race, and he either forgot or maliciously forgot, air quotes. Either way, the cat did not end up on the Zodiac calendar, and so she chases the rat to the ends of the earth as its sworn enemy. And that is the story of the Great Race.
Yay! It's a cute story. I mean, I like how there's so many animals involved, and each line we do get like a hint of the personality that goes along with it. So it's very cool. But I'm curious, do the elements like have a rotation, or is there a reason behind the element part? Because we talked about the wood snake.
Yes. So each year is associated with an element. Usually there are specific animals that are more associated with one element than the other. So for example, we have metal being associated with the monkey and rooster, wood with the tiger and rabbit, water with the rat and the pig, fire with the snake and the horse, and earth with the ox, dragon, goat, and dog. However, just because those are the ones that are most closely associated with those elements doesn't mean that it's always the same, since it's a cycle as well. So for example, the way that I saw online, so I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but the way that it's said that you find out which element you get, it's by looking at the last number of your birth year. So 0 or 1 is metal, 2 or 3 is water, 4 or 5 is wood, 6 or 7 is fire, 8 or 9 is earth. So it's almost like a 2-year cycle. And then we have, so what do they actually mean? So what I found online was that metal was the element of solidity and willpower. Water was responsiveness and persuasion. Wood is imagination and creativity. Fire is passion and bursts of dynamic energy. Earth is down-to-earth qualities that encourage focus and commitment to achieving goals. So for example, this year, we have the wood snake.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would love if someone who has a more in-depth knowledge of this or a more familiar knowledge with this could message us and let us know what they think. Is it something that is as big as the Zodiac? Or, because from my understanding of it, it does seem like it goes hand in hand. So you have the wood snake, the fire ox, the water pig. But when I've heard it before, I've only ever heard the animal. So I'm not 100% sure how it works. But it does seem to be that you do have the element and the animal go hand in hand.
Yeah, no, the element part is interesting and adds that layer of specificity. Yeah, because then you might know someone else with your same animal, but they might not have the same element to go along with it, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I do know that it's kind of like in Western astrology, we do have our 4 elements, right? We have earth, air, fire, and water. And they were all in harmony until the Fire Nation attacked.
The Fire Nation attacked.
And we kind of see these elements, at least in Western philosophy and astrology, we see them as kind of balancing each other out. So you need them to work together, you need to have harmony. And I think it's kind of similar in Chinese astrology. They're the 5 elements, and it's part of Chinese philosophy. So everything is connected. And everything is about balance and change. And it's not really just with the zodiac signs. I know it goes into other parts of Chinese philosophy, but I'm not 100% sure how. I'm assuming if it's the same as our 4 elements, that it's very much talking about how everything needs to be in balance, how one is a weakness to the other, and also how each of them can make you stronger and how they're linked. So that is the story of the Chinese zodiac. If you want to read a little bit more about it, I do recommend some of our sources, which include Ruth Q. Sun's The Asian Animal Zodiac and Wolfram Eberhard's Chinese Fairy Tale and Folk Tales. Of course, there are tons of stories out there, and I do recommend, because it is the Year of the Snake, that everyone go check out one of China's 4 great folk tales, which is The Legend of the White Snake as well. It's also a fun story if you want to listen to it or read it today on the day of the Chinese New Year.
So yeah, thanks for listening, travelers. I hope that if this is your year, if you're the Year of the Snake, you have a good one. And for everyone else, enjoy the place you got in the race, because it's a cycle and it's a little meaningless with places. So yeah, thank you for listening, dear travelers, and we look forward to seeing you again next time for another exciting tale.
And as always, if you want to see the show summary, please do check out the website www.talesfromenchanforest.com. If you do want to hear from us on a social side, we are on Bluesky, Mastodon. We are still on Twitter or X or on TikTok. Basically, anywhere you are social, you can find us at our Instagram with our podcast name or at From Enchanted. However, if you are old school like Sparrow, you can email us at talesfromeenchantedforest@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your comments, questions, and suggestions.
And remember, there's always a place for you in the Enchanted Forest.